Hey, this is Misery Loves Company, a weekly social reading series hosted by miserytourism.com. Every Friday, we welcome transgressive and outsider writers. I forgot the second one. I was like transgressive and transgressive and outsider writers to come and share their work with us. This is a Friday. We're doing this shit. First up is Michael.
Cool. Sorry. Didn't realize I was gonna be up first, so I did not prepare my share link. Anyone can view, copy. Okay, this should work. Um, cool. So this is something short that I wrote yesterday. It's called Happy New Year. Sugar-brained, nitrous-wire conviction demanded we choose potatoes over eggs. Pranking houses was art at 15 years old. We painted payphoned death threats, sculpted lawns with shit-spackled underwear. The pizza slapped on L's new Ford pickup was an Ars Poetica. Fuck eggs, we were geniuses, not monsters. Seeking fortune across South Montford's mass-produced mazes. Our last New Year's Eve together, D found handles of 40-year-old vodka in his father's attic. Relics of an abundant age, splashed Red Bull in our blindness. G brought a sack of 20 russets. Under dim starlight, we skulked through lawns. Windows lit our way with New York sponsored content dream. To L's snowless brown crunch lawn, we launched a spud storm against the roof because the sound, goddamn, that sound was glory. Then we shrieked back to safety. An hour later, we unleashed a second barrage. L appeared shirtless, shoeless, shouted, cowards, fucking cowards, because he knew us, because his doorbell reminded him almost every night that his wife was gone. Our pride clamored for a third assault. Potato skins barely airborne when L, the mad drunk god, victim of 1,000 neighborhood lies, burst outside, pursued us nude through the ice night to power lines beneath the boundless hum of American energy. L snared G, both tumbled to sand. He throttled G's neck with its newborn beard. L long past mercy. What would you do knowing another year had left you behind? The rest of us grabbed L, begged forgiveness like it was mother's milk. Let him go, please. We're sorry. Just let him go. And that's
Holy
it.
fuck. Holy fuck. Man, the energy of this piece. And the energy and the trajectory of this piece. The trajectory of this piece is absolutely fucking amazing because you start so deep inside the consciousness of these kids, right? And all of the details that are chosen. Oh my god, I love the what is it? Beard with newborn, or neck with its newborn beard moment, right? And it just everything about like the this is a very short piece, but all the details you've chosen to sketch out the psyche of these kids. And if it was just that, even if it was just like a really sharp stream of consciousness piece about these kids pranking this poor loser, that would be great. But the way it ends with like this little sketch of this incredibly sad, incredibly worn out, clearly middle-aged guy, right? And the confrontation between him and the kids, you like understand without being told why he hates these fucking kids so much. And it's not just because they're throwing potatoes at his roof, although I'm sure that's contributing. But like you get that moment of like confrontational resentment between like this guy who's completely been wrung out by life and these kids who like have all this youthful enthusiasm. And it's done so quickly, so effortlessly. But oh man, that ending has such like emotional power to it. Like as someone who used to be those kids, now's that angry old man, right?
Yeah, this was, I mean, no one in my group of friends was ever strangled, thankfully, but there was like a period where, yeah, between 15 and 16, we used to whip potatoes at houses because we thought that we were above eggs. A lot of this is taken from like pretty explicitly real experience. There was a guy we used to prank all the time, and there was a New Year's Eve. We got him a couple of times in a row, and he was really not pleased that we were hitting his house repeatedly. And yeah, he chased us for like a good half mile that last time. Um, yeah, so He got the last laugh though, because the police caught wise to our reign of terror, and yeah,
Oh.
they hunted us down. It was the prank phone calling that did us in, and one
yeah.
one friend of mine in particular took it to like an extremely unhealthy degree, and yeah, they tracked us down.
I want a sequel to the piece to this about the prank phone calling and about like, the police,
I'll
like
do
the
that.
grizzled
That's a good idea.
detective hunting down the prank, the pranksters.
The police made us apologize, and we had to like mow a bunch of lawns, and it was not nearly as exciting as it could have been, but the things that my friend was saying to these people, because he was really freelancing these prank phone calls by the end, it's not good. It wasn't good.
Yeah, I remember when I was in high school, me and one of my friends, a bunch of friends, just went, and there's this guy out a couple miles from town, like in a place, it's kind of wooded area and shit. And I remember we were throwing something at his house, at his roof, just like in this, and like you could see the guy, and we were in a position where we could throw the shit, and we could see him inside through the window. And this story reminds me of that, because you could just see him getting angrier and angrier, and like the shit just building up. And that this story reminds me of that energy.
We were walking through, these power lines were real, and we were walking through them, and one night just all like hopped up. We weren't even drinking or smoking, we were just hopped up on sugar, and we found this giant bag of just like disgustingly soiled laundry. If somebody just tossed it out there out of shame or whatever, but for us it was like we just found like a bag of prank gold. And yeah, we really spread the wealth.
Redistribution of wealth.
Yeah. It was some good socialism.
Thank you, Michael. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Just one thing, we've had some trolls coming in here. So if you have a friend who's in the waiting room or whatever, let me know if somebody's sitting there and can't get in, because I'm not letting in anyone I don't recognize. Does anyone know Simon McKnight? Because Simon McKnight to me sounds like a fucking troll kid name, but so I'm not letting him in unless somebody says that he's their friend or whatever. All right. Rudy's up next.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna read a poem that I wrote on my Substack. It's another one of these Midjourney things. Let me get the link here for you. That's the link. Image was created with Midjourney. Well, it's a composite of images from Midjourney, really. It's very Dune themed, I guess. This one's called Depictions of the Prophet. I'm marooned in what seems to be a head food desert where my Jefferson starship crashed because the navigator couldn't do what the dormouse said. I'm provoking any locals I can find with my indigo gaze, traversing silk roads in their bad company, asking them for a pinch, just a little. You fucking addict. One sneers with an apathy that burns me. When was the last time you used? Tomorrow, I slur. My withdrawals are Kabul, Hanoi, Arakan, complete chaotic resignation as I wander homeless, as reality comes apart. I tumble downward on a ladder of memories from lifetimes ago, smashing my unlucky pumpkin against each rung until peace is upon me. Eyes closed, head ajar. Muhammad fucking Aisha with 2 huge dildos on her first period, someone whispers. I'm in high school again. First period, global studies. They're talking about Charlie Hebdo. Yawn. Mary Poppins is singing Go to Sleep on repeat in my brain radio, just piling on the reverse psychology as seniors debate the pylons of Islam, additional needed, etc. And oil comes up like bile, and the burqa ban comes up like every goddamn time. And the teacher comes up and starts yelling in my face for the hidden camera, like and subscribe. I'm busy depicting the prophet, not Muhammad, but Mahdi, scourge of the Arrakis sands. Iraq is drinker of the water of life. zero sugars, skillful wielder of the Cry's knife. And man, this Timothy Chamillionaire dude looks like he's just gonna cry into his knife. No shade. He's just doing hot boy things, constant maneuvering, thousands of blue-eyed girls shouting, "Do the worm." Just hit this arid Gaia with the thumper. Wa-boom, wa-boom, and turn a dry ecology wet. Mercy, mercy me. I want to draw Paul having sex with a sandworm or blowing himself up, suicide vest under his thobe, or ants in his still suit for some reason, not so still suit. I want to draw Paul as David Koresh and frame the portrait with lyrics from Shoshanahim because the madman of House Waco isn't the only one with a voice of fire. But I can't draw, and this dreamscape is a superposition of 2001 and 2015. So Midjourney hasn't been invented yet. And anyway, Midjourney has a policy against obscenity and gore. Cue Julie Andrews lulling German children to sleep. My favorite hobby, addiction, is self-destructive transgressive art. So I guess I'm saying fuck you to myself and others as I sketch a stick figure staring at his righteously chosen enemies from behind blue eyes. He's doing 9/11 and all the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are, and I am, hard for the melange of reaction and attention. The spice must flow. My combo of sad and bad is holy shit, and I feel no shame. But my dreams, they aren't as empty as, well, you know. So in a timely fashion, I'm whisked away to math class by a sideways glance. The teacher is spouting formulas. The teacher is a formula, an amalgamation of people I've seen, probably, weasel words. This teacher is totally broken up by the Hebdo attack, also a bad breakup. She's teaching the controversy, teaching kinetic energy is equal to the weight of the bullet times bullet's velocity squared divided by some big damn number, / imagine fire flying at some big damn heroes. You know what the definition of a hero is? The laws of freedom of expression mostly say, you, angry Frenchman, have the right to draw the prophet with a fat dick and a bomb in his turban. The laws of science agree. In Neil deGrasse Tyson's voice. Neurotransmitters gonna transmit graded electrical potential. Muscles gonna get tight because you just can't. Contraction. Graphite gonna degrade under pressure. Erosion. And further, those same laws dictate KE is how hard that bullet gonna hit you. Just the hits, Hornaday index of terminal standards, man. My Paul is at this moment full of calculations because he's the leading man in Herbert's intrigue-heavy science fiction opus, and because he's drawn in my pre-calc notebook. And my Paul's guitar is acoustic because of course it is. My Paul's guitar is vibrating through the void, through space as unfolded as my laundry. Twang. String theory of a dead man. My girlfriend's one of the 4 fundamental forces. My girlfriend's got to have it. Not gonna lie, math is my worst subject. I'm treading water by mind skimming this sci-fi hot mess of future tech and weird frilly royal costuming, pretending I'm Stephen McKinley Henderson, pretending to be Thufir Hawat, pretending to be interested when I roll my pupils back, do the numbers without Texas Instruments and say, that'll be 8.5633333. Wrong answer that teaches rounding off as she approximates that I'll be digging ditches yay wide forever after high school. She's right, cunt, but I transgress. The what ifs holding me hostage ask, what about Paul as a cat or Paul as a beetle while witches hold needles close to necks? What about Paul as a woman, closer? All of this as a sandstorm transports me bodily or mindily or handily to gym class in Dream High where the teacher is name redacted, a game designer / artist I dislike because she didn't like the way I diddy bop, aka me making games where you draw alien child porn, which, yeah, fair. All of the jocks are nerds, are jocks with threatening musculature and egos, photo bashes of swole doge and cheems. Their bloom blinds my dilated mind's eye, and now it's 2020 something. Some of my drawings of Paul anger them, not because they're a waste of time, but because they waste Mother Earth's finite renewable resources. Fascist. Because a computer held my hand gently through their creation. Fag. Because my inspiration came not from the firing squad of my own synapses, with fat fingers executing their iron will, but from elsewhere. Weasel words. Generative images dance in everyone's unconsciousness during REM. 2 REM, maybe. Yet dreaming creatives still tumb out. AI art isn't art. Lol. Mickey is Paul Atreides is cool, I guess, the jock nerds say. But what does it symbolize? And I say they're both rats, both mice, I mean, correcting myself before I'm caught by these bright stars, these miniature suns. Okay, they respond, and then a dodgeball hits me. I start to throw it back, little pump, but mid-arc, my pitch is frozen. Huh? Cameras ignite in the background, NBA Jam. Teacher starts lecturing me about potential harm. Potential energy wanes. I wane. I wax the floors and buff them too, just like the guy coming back to his high school as a janitor in Kurt's song. Instructor of boys is what the Fremen call Modib, the mouse that Paul uses for his taken name. The gym teacher is instructing me to wash my hands with soap. I hear my name on the announcements. It's a girl's name. At the office, they tell me to say Assalamu alaikum. After I say Assalamu alaikum, the principal gets on top of me and shoves his dick up my ass with Harkonnen cruelty. They're not human, they're brutal. I hemorrhage truth and lie as he holds my scribbles up in front of me. An improvised explosive loaded with rhetorical shrapnel, such as, is this college level work? Emerges from his mouth. Am I now in college? The shockwave alone annihilates me with a force, F, and now I'm meat-shaped giblets on the floor. I realize that the nature of all transgressive creativity can be plotted on a graph. Chance of punishment versus desire to transgress, and other factors I can't plot because my TI-84 only makes 2-dimensional graphs of this multi-dimensional world. It's 2015. While bodies cool in Paris morgues, I mentally compare the penises in Charlie's drawings of Muhammad's naked body to the towers Paul is punching down in my drawings, an impact study. The towers seem bigger from one angle, Muhammad's prick from another. But size is a slave to perspective, and hell, self-worth is also a slave to perspective. And my perspective is not a benevolent slave owner. So at this point in time, I'm telling them $2 to oil up and fight for massa. Amtal rule invoked over my feels about highbrow rule 34. Fight niggers until that sweat pours out you, until tearful bitterness flows, until the very purpose of the fight becomes fluid. Fight until that thought I had, which act of phallic creativity is more significant, is tested to destruction, hopefully mine. Winner takes all the juices. I look away from the scuffle and now it's biology class somehow. Several dream hours earlier, according to my intuitive dream clock. Frog dissection. The smell of formaldehyde is making me feel some type of way about my own saliva. The thing I'm supposed to disassemble is a Frankenstein, the head of Elsa Kayat, Charlie Hebdo's editor, on the body of a little frog. But the head speaks to me. Her voice is a lowercase v. This is no Bene Gesserit interrogation. But she's trying to help me, trying to unfuck my potential energy deficit. She, Elsa, was a trained psychiatrist, psychoanalyst. Not really, I say, in reference to something about my mother. I punt similar questions about friends, family. When my hobbies come up, I'm a skier and not in the Starsheets tribe sense. Oh, and also video games and tabletop games. I slide way, way back into dream time as I backslide in real time with therapy And suddenly I'm back at 10 years old watching Sliders, listening to some hip adults my parents knew go on about jeux video, adventure games mostly, the quest for glory in a desert. I'm timeless in my childhood state, a rogue state of green shaggy carpet with an interim technocracy, shoes internally displaced by wearer perversion, and kneeling on this fertile ground, I continue to draw. Believing I've uncovered the secret to folding space, I divide a printed version of my Steven Universe style drawing of Paul in half, aided by a symmetry that could be either from Midjourney or the sorcery of CalArts, dodges a tomato. Now Modib is in a position to let the obscenities I'm shouting with each heavy line pass through him like the little death, in one eardrum and out the other. I pierce his right ear, or is it the left one? Scream and snap my pencil. And that's it. And these are the Midjourney images that I generated and used below. Yeah, that's it.
Man, first of all, the collages that you've attached to these just keep getting better and fucking better. This one, this one is absolutely fucking unhinged. I can't even. I love Mickey Mouse in there at the top. So man, I'm sorry, I'm scrolling through the images now. Paul Atreides in still suit, holding guitar, watercolor style, hyper detail. Jesus, Midjourney can do fucking anything, huh?
It can do pretty much whatever. Yeah.
So this is my second time hearing this piece because you showed it to me, or this is my second time experiencing this piece, I guess I should say. Because you sent this to me earlier this week. And what I love about this piece is like, it really, and I think effectively, tries to tackle like the psychology behind the compulsion to create transgressive art, right? Transgressive writing, transgressive whatever. And it does it in a way that is like so like frank and self-effacing, right? Like just so like there are no attempts here to like gussy up the artistic impulse and make it something like honorable or pro-social or even like productive for you, right? This is like one of the like most like unambiguously negative pieces about like the desire to create that I've read in recent memory. And yet like it's so funny throughout, and it's so full of like these wonderful like turns of phrase and references and allusions and wordplay and these vivid images, everything you associate with good fucking poetry and good literature, that it's like it's wound up and in war with itself in a really fascinating way, where on the one hand you like really seem to be running the artistic impulse into the ground for reasons that I think are psychologically like honest and valid, like it's pathological to want to create art, right? And yet like all of this is bound up in this piece of really vivid, really effective art, and you're left saying, well, you know, it's good, man, it's good. I like
Cool.
that.
Yeah, thanks. Somebody asked where you can see the collages. The one for this one is on the page at the top, but all the rest of them are on the other poems are on the Substack.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks, man.
No, man, it's an awesome fucking piece. I also love the way you take that like iconic refrain from Behind Blue Eyes and like use it in a really, I don't know, in a really clever and effective way, right? Like because you let everyone in the world has heard that song, so everyone in the world can fill in the blanks when you say it. And of course, like the whole thing is about like the tension between like dreams and conscience, or the lack thereof, right? Anyway, man, it kicks ass. Um, Thank you. And I apologize to everyone about the fucking trolls. I let fucking what there was that guy in the waiting room, and I was like, that's a troll. And then he stayed in the waiting room and stayed in the waiting room. And I said, maybe he's
Oh
not.
yeah, what
And I
one
let
called one of them called me a faggot during the thing. It was awesome.
yeah, they've called me a faggot a few
It's
times.
really
I got him
appropriate.
finally. There's another guy sitting in the waiting room, and I'm not going to make the same mistake this time. Also, I guess I accidentally booted Adam, who's going to read.
Oh, really?
Wait, I was gonna say though, I know that there were two GGs. I really think to be safe that both should just be removed. We can't take any risks.
Nah, Josh, I'm pretty confident I got the right GG. Good try, though. Good try, Josh. You're just afraid he's going to heckle you when you're up.
Oh, I know he's going to. The fear is real.
So, Dan's up next.
Well, these are flash fiction pieces I wrote for a prompt on Visible Networks. Must have been like 3 or 4 years ago, but I found them today and I thought they were interesting. All right, here goes. Number 1. My ex told me that I was falling down the rabbit hole, but she didn't understand. 6 degrees of separation doesn't apply online. It's more like 2. You are 2 jumps from FSB operatives locked in the rhetorical warfare with NSA shills on their other side. I can see these fucking glowies everywhere. They hide behind cartoon avatars while working their damnedest to steer the conversation away from your own best interests. You are 2 jumps from the social media managers of conglomerates. At any second, the newest sphere sets itself on fire and turns its light on a corporation, pouring raw sewage directly into the mouths of Aborigines, and those fucking roaches and scoots scatter. I'm in all caps screaming at these fucking people, these glowies, these government and corporate chills, and trying to draw the cleansing light of the unwashed mob onto their bloated asses. I sleep during the day, post at night, but now my rent's due and I haven't bothered looking for a job. There's a liquor store down the street that this boomer couple runs. They've been nothing but nice to me, so I'm wearing a mask with a 38 in my pocket I bought from a guy named @YanDeer47. 2. I've shared my food with my roommate for months so he can get back on the horse and start pumping words out, but he just lets it rot in the plastic container outside his bedroom door. Neither of us can work real jobs anymore. We've been on the grind too long. #grind for life, #entrepreneur life, #24/7. I spend all days in front of my screen with a keyboard firing out 10,000 words a day so the perverts around the world keep a roof over our head. I'm only supposed to be doing 5K, but he just lies in bed scrolling through social. Bad breakup, I think. But that's no excuse to let the team down. Tired of busting my ass to keep them in the game. We're actively eroding the moral fabric of enemy nation states, and there's a quota you have to hit. I'm going hard enough to double it every day with darknet stims, just so I can put frozen meals in the fridge. I sold the oven for chems. Neither of us was using it. His name is on the lease, so I'm thinking I need to get him 404'd somehow. Not killed, but like moved to a better place, somewhere he can just lie in bed all day and not worry about anything. I wrote up a note and printed it out, called 911 and told him he's a danger to himself and hasn't been eating. It's not completely a lie, but the state understands the stakes of what we're trying to do. 3. Destruction is an engineering problem solved simply with the recursion. You simply need a way to turn what you've destroyed into something that can be used to devour the next thing, and so on. Think of the game Snake. You start as a single dot and see how many dots you can absorb before crashing into your own body. The goal is to avoid that part by expanding in a methodical manner. I started in my digital workshop with a machine that could convert whatever material it devoured with its grinding maw into mechanical additions to itself. It had wheels so it could seek out bigger and bigger sources of raw material, and a small robotic arm that was meant to expand as the machine did. Within a week of devouring the rocks and trees and soils in the park outside my avatar's home, it had built itself an auger and was burrowing into the core of the earth. Within hours, the machine I built had devoured the map out from under the players. We were caught in the loop, slowly falling into the machine, being devoured and respawning. The devs had to reset. A day later, I came home from work to find the feds in my living room. They wanted to know how I built the machine and it looked like they would take no for an answer. 4. People always called me sensitive. I can always tell when something is wrong. I know things. Mom and dad have been acting strange. It's my 18th birthday and they keep stressing the importance of this doctor appointment. My mom started to cry for no reason after making sure I knew to be ready. The next day, they guide me into a white room and inject me with something. There's no music, no overture. This is scientific and for the greater good. I feel the drill bit's pressure, but not pain along my spine. My body is numb, ajar from my mind. Ports are installed along my spine up to the base of my skull. I start to feel strange things. I hear screams, pleas, prayers, blessings, curses. I feel fire and water, ice and earth between my toes. Then it goes black. I awake in a circular room with a cube of screens in the center of the room. They turn cerulean blue. Then a perky male voice says, "Welcome to the Oracle program." I realize that my life is over and there's nothing I can do. 5. Across the street, a woman with a flock of albino crows appearing from behind her crosses the street diagonally. The mint tea cools on the frozen patio chair outside the office shop pulls my attention to the past. The scent, mint. The police sprayed or blew some sort of mentholated scent into my nose when they patted me down for weapons. I remember smoking menthols at a party, being sick with peppermint essential oils diffused through the room. The mint grounded me in the concrete. But I don't buy concrete reality. The internet immediately starts throwing ads for toothpaste and gum at me. Social media is talking about the girl with the albino crows, not directly, but through suggestion. The bird-like mask of a plague doctor is on sale. I buy it, and I buy the gum and the toothpaste. I buy a stuffed albino crow and a bag of quick mix concrete. The internet is a trillion threads being woven perpendicular to the tapestry of human fate. My stomach crumbles and I have no money left for food. I don't need to eat every day anymore. No one does. 6. I feel my son's hand in mine, and the way he hides behind my leg makes me want to break out of the line and run. He didn't have any problems at school. He just wasn't behaving like they wanted him to. Every morning, I'd sit him in front of a console and put the Neuralink headband on him. Soothing music played, and he was given options. This is how they figure out your lot in life. Everything is one long interview now. They see what your potential is and mean to exploit it to the best of their abilities. There's no room for people at any age to deviate from the grand plan. When I wasn't looking, he took the Neuralink off and put it atop the dog's head. Bentham just panted away as his brain sped through the questionnaire. My son was laughing even when I screamed at him, but it was too late. I didn't catch it in time. Now I don't know where I'm meant to take my son. I've tried telling them what happened, but they say the tests don't lie. We're in a long line of parents and their children. Most of them are divisibly, developmentally disabled in some way. I've heard rumors about this place. The building is a brutal black cube, and people drop off their children and sometimes get called back to pick up the remains. I hope I can tell them one last time that there's been a mistake. My son isn't, he's just a comedian. 7. It took 17 days before Watcher AI picked up on what we were doing, flashing our phone lights at each other across the street or from the tops of buildings. Morse code let us communicate positions of riot cops and PMCs across the city quickly and without having to go through the grid. The Sentry drones identified the major nodes of information and black bagged them for re-education in the nearest government hospital. At that point, we had tried whispers, we tried lights, we tried signs, we tried whistling. The Watcher picked up on all of it. There wasn't much left. In re-education, we were told we were crazy and we needed help, but they left us alone in the art room for a bit too long. We took turns drawing silently, forming contextual images. A bird was a sentry, any bird in an image. An insect was a cop or a PMC. Once we figured out the visual language, we burned the drawings and flushed the ashes. We were all released on condition of monthly neuroleptic injections, and that was our sacrifice for freedom. We kept the flame hidden in plain sight from the AI, freely broadcasting crude images, locational metadata encrypted in the file. It wasn't a panacea, but it brought us some time. 8. In the mountains above the city, we fast for a month. Maker says this is to purify our bodies. We vow to not speak. Maker says this is to purify our minds. It's impossible to speak to her directly. Our guards are armed and keep the mob of us away from touching her. Her hair is curly and black. She moves like a goddess moves. We build a temple to the old ones out of logs, a structure that the maker keeps in her mind's eye. She directs every log into its place. On the 31st day of our pilgrimage, the temple is complete. The maker gives us paper and pens and says, write your life up to this moment. Our lives are scrawled onto razor-thin foolscap. Then we hang our stories on nails inside the structure we spent a month building. All of us form a semicircle around the maker, who lights a torch and sets fire to the temple. The fire attracts Sentry Jones from the city. Quickly, her guards hand us our cell phones back, gives us weapons and points to the city below. Let's go, she says. Your life begins now. And that's it.
Dan, I love the way these pieces build on each other. And like on two levels, right? On one level, I love the way your world gets bigger and bigger and richer, right? Like with each one of these very brief pieces. But I also like the way that these pieces start grounded in a reality that we all recognize. Like the first two are arguably not even speculative fiction at all, right? The first one like is kind of on the cusp of being speculative fiction, but it's the social media landscape that we vividly recognize, where you're never 100% sure who is and isn't a fad, who is and isn't real, right? And then the second one, like about the kind of like, you know, the troll grind or whatever, the like the asset thing, like the online internet asset stuff, that's all real. I mean, that's all authentic shit. And so your reader like buys completely into this reality that they think is their own, and then it gets more paranoid, and it gets more detached, and it gets more abstract, and it gets more sci-fi, and it gets more cyberpunk, and each one is just a little weirder and just a little bit more speculative than last, and the audience is like pulled along as like reality unravels. It's really cool the way you've structured these pieces, I think.
Thanks, William.
Yeah, I really love the first of all, the use of the term glowies. That is a good word, and I love that. But like the way these like coalesce around, like William was saying, like this kind of future tech that's also real shit. And like the way they build on each other is really wild. Like I said in the chat, like the metaphors and stuff, like the snake shit really got me. That was fucking good. But the hospital stuff, like there's no music, no overture, like it's like this, like that, you know, the Clockwork Orange thing, but also, you know, this reality, you know, they're just doing experiments on people, you know. It's fucking, it's really you paint a really vivid picture of a world that's like ours, but also something worse. And that's really, I really love the way you do that in all your pieces.
Cheers. Thanks for reading, or thanks for listening.
Yeah, Dan, thank you, man, for reading. So Josh is up next, and Josh, you're going to be reading another excerpt from your serialized New York travel log, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's going to be 3 short chapters. And I'm going to put the link in the chat. And just before I do, so the first 2, one was our lovable narrator is on the megabus to New York. It's, by the way, I should say it's I'll just put the 1 second, sorry. I'll put the link there first and say, yeah, it's I'm driving 10 hours and crossing an international border to read my fiction in front of maybe a dozen people for 6 minutes is the name of the overall piece. And so the first chapter is the bus right there, and the second chapter is arriving, and the narrator and his girlfriend, it might have said Sheila previously, it's been changed to Sarah fictionally, and they were waiting for a message from the Airbnb host, Dorian, to let them know they could go to the place. And so this is kind of so this is where we resume this story. So chapter 3, Dorian. I'm surprised Dorian is Asian. He meets us in the hall after we negotiate 4 flights of narrow stairs with our luggage. On the way up, I'm thinking it'll be these stairs and not the metal hatches that perforate the sidewalks that pose the biggest threat when I'm staggering back from the disco party. Dorian is renting out half of the top floor of 404 Wythe Avenue, a squat red brick building synonymous with Brooklyn. There's an industrial style rolling door bisecting the apartment. He uses it to separate his living space from the 2 rooms he rents out on Airbnb, as well as the kitchen, which everyone shares, he explains. So where are you guys from? When we tell him, he says he loves Toronto. Work sends him there a few times a year. He's especially into Parkdale because it has a similar feel to Williamsburg. I see what Dorian means. Parkdale does seem like Williamsburg, but on a microscopic scale. It's like viewing Williamsburg from space. On foot, you can cut across Parkdale in 15 or 20 minutes. Sometimes it's used as a stand-in for New York in the movies, especially this one building in particular, right at the corner of Queen Street West and Macdonnell Avenue. Probably because it's one of the few old buildings in Toronto with a fire escape. When fire escapes were the norm, few, if any, buildings in the city were tall enough to require one. Fitting that Toronto is known across North America as Hollywood North. It doesn't have a personality of its own, at least not a personality that anyone would find attractive. So it adopts traits from other places and plays their parts in the movies. One day it's New York, the next it's Chicago. Sometimes it's not even identified. It's just an inconspicuous urban center in the Midwest. Our city hall appears in Star Trek, the kind of obscure factoid that everyone in Toronto knows because the city and its denizens are happy for any attention at all. Our architecture is largely faceless or pastiche. Most of the new buildings are what my architect friend Elizabeth calls broken telephone modernism. Like someone in Europe tried explaining modernism to our architects over the phone, but the wires got crossed. The old buildings are Victorian or brutalist. The latter being interesting, but because they don't look old or historic, they keep meeting the wrecking ball. The preservationists have about as much taste as anyone else who willingly stays in Toronto. One of Toronto's few significant buildings is a bank. The TD Centre is this cluster of 6 towers, including 2 imposing black monoliths, like out of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Mies van der Rohe designed them. Thing is, he used the same design in other cities. Even Toronto's best is a simulacrum. Don't get me started on the CN Tower, which looks ridiculous from any angle. Visible no matter where you are, whether you want to see it or not, it's an unsolicited dick pic in the skyline. Of course, I don't say any of this to Dorian. No, we're keeping things breezy. I'm on vacation. I've driven 10 hours and crossed an international border to read my fiction in front of maybe a dozen people. I'm on top of the world. Yeah, Parkdale's cool, I say. I used to live there, but I moved when I took a job on the other side of the city. Fact check, my friend owned the house that my apartment was in, and he evicted me over noise complaints. He came to my 35th birthday party, and we're cool now. Dorian apologizes for not having fresh sheets and towels on hand. He'll get them right away. That's okay. We've got to get ready for the party. I want a pre-drink, so let's see what the bodegas are packing. And just for more added context, of course, this is leading up to a disco party that the narrator attends the day before the reading. The day after this one, this is Sunday, will be the day of the reading. Chapter 4, Mr. Sunday. The third 19-ounce pina colada flavored Corona was a mistake. Arguably, every sip was. You've got to try this, I said back at the Airbnb, passing the first can to Sarah after I cracked it and took a swig. You're an animal, she concluded after a sip. We're walking the last block to the party. It's an industrial side street lined with sheet metal siding, chain link fencing, and washed out brick warehouses. The steady unch of a house beat hits us long before we see the venue, which is called nowadays This is one of my favorite parts of any party, the hearing before the seeing, the way it slowly becomes a reality first as sound, then sight, like waking up from a deep sleep, like waking up and not being disappointed. Last month, after deciding to drive 10 hours and cross an international border to read my fiction in front of maybe a dozen people, I quickly began looking for legitimate reasons to travel. This party is one of them. Mr. Sunday is an offshoot of Mr. Saturday Night, an underground disco house and techno party by a Brooklyn-based record label of the same name. I've been obsessed with them for some time. Some of my most played 12 inches are on the imprint. You should listen to Mad Disrespect by Anthony Naples to get an idea of the sound. The lineup moves fast. When we get to the front, we're told tickets are $30, more than I wanted to pay. But my one responsibility in planning this entire trip was to pre-order advance tickets, which I didn't. I fork over the strange currency and we pass through the gate. Before we're let into the bar area, a gender-neutral person makes our group of mostly cis-seeming young people gather in a circle. I'm skeptical at first and thankful when we're not all told to hold hands. The message is straightforward. No phones or photos on the dance floor. Stay hydrated. If you've had too much to drink or are having some other bad drug experience, look for anyone wearing a neon armband. Oh, you can also call over anyone wearing a neon armband if somebody is bothering you on the dance floor. Okay, so if you're a creep, a possibly gender-neutral person is going to have you move along. Having spent most of my adult life in and around club music, this is not superfluous. Whenever Toronto tries anything like this, though, it comes across as performative and self-satisfied. I knew it didn't have to be that way, that it's possible to make a space safe without creating a safe space. Having received our instructions, we're let into the bar area. There are picnic tables under a canopy of trees. Beyond that, there's a swell dance floor, already packed at 4 p.m. Me and Sarah venture into the thick of it. Eamon Harkin, one half of Mr. Saturday Night, is on the decks. He's playing loopy disco house records. He's sharing the bill with Peach, a London-based DJ from Toronto who I met in 2017 before she left. We're right up at the DJ booth. At these parties, there's no priority seating or VIP areas. I'm sorry, I don't really have strong opinions of democracy. If democracy was more like this afternoon, maybe I would. Eamon Harkin mixes a new song with a clap pattern like... Oops. Sorry about that. I got lost in the claps. 20 minutes later, I think every song is longer than my reading. People say electronic music is repetitive, like it's a bad thing. I disagree. I think Michel Houellebecq nails it when, in his nonfiction collection Interventions 2020, he writes, I don't find it boring to repeat endlessly what I like doing. I'd go even further. True happiness is in repetition, in the perpetual restarting of the same, as in dance and music. For example, Autobahn by Kraftwerk. Another song drops and I'm happy. I'm even smiling, something I never do because of my teeth. I'm having simple and earnest thoughts in Williamsburg, New York. My Ray-Ban Clubmasters keep sliding down my nose from the sweat. This is awesome, Sarah says to me over a deep kick drum that thumps like a heart through a stethoscope. People are actually dancing. We've had this conversation about Toronto and what I refer to condescendingly as guitar music. No doubt there's great indie music. I like shoegaze and all that. The problem is, with few exceptions, the better the music an indie band plays, the less people move, at least in Toronto. As for EDM, obviously people go crazy for that shit, but it's vacuous. So this party is a significant sweet spot, underground music that people engage with. As I'm thinking this, someone bumps into me and smiles and says, sorry. Something else that doesn't happen in Toronto despite Canadian stereotypes. Later on, Peach comes on. I see Eamon Harkin outside the washrooms and tell him that I like this set, man. I mention I've come from Toronto for this. He seems surprised. If only he knew the truth, that I've driven 10 hours and crossed an international border to read my fiction in front of maybe a dozen people. Peach's set is my ideal. Stuff that sounds like stuff I like, but is stuff I haven't heard. It's all 90s rave piano stabs and breakbeats. I push my Ray-Ban Clubmasters up the ridge of my nose again before heading back to the bar area. Somehow, I keep getting served palomas. Somehow, I end up talking to a German girl. Somehow, we're discussing which is worse, the Holocaust or colonialism. We agree on colonialism. Hitler was a better man than Columbus, I say with mock conviction. Another paloma, please. Eamon Harkin and Peach play each play another mini set, and then the party is winding down and we're asked to clear out. I know I'm not going to remember how I end up getting back to the Airbnb. And then chapter 5, brunch in Williamsburg. This is the next day. We're having brunch in Williamsburg. We elect not to go to some restaurant called Sunday in Brooklyn / Williamsburg. Instead, we're at a place called Rabbit Hole. I don't think anyone wants to hear anything more about brunch in Williamsburg.
I don't know, Josh. I want to hear more about brunch in Williamsburg. No, I actually don't. Josh, this series of pieces has been really fascinating to me because a lot of your work is written from the thinly veiled perspective of Josh Sherman, right? But in a lot of your work, that Josh is very obviously a carefully constructed caricature of yourself, right? This is a very different Josh Sherman that we're getting in this piece, one that feels like more, I don't want to say more complex, because that makes it sound like your other fiction is somehow less than this. And I don't think that's what's going on here. But like, and I don't want to say messier, because that makes this sound worse than your other fiction. But I think you're getting a more complicated version of the Josh Sherman voice here. One that, like, I love when you go on the tangent about like architecture in Toronto, because it's like, oh yeah, there we're seeing Josh Sherman, the real estate journalist, right? And at other moments, there's some moments in here that you entirely drop the like cynical Josh Sherman facade and get downright like a little sappy, a little bit like emotional, a little bit like vulnerable, right? In a way that this persona usually isn't vulnerable. And there's all this stuff like you get like little flashes of real like authentic interest that isn't ironic, isn't detached, isn't like self-deprecating, but then you still get those ironic, detached, self-deprecating moments, and you're getting like a view of a fuller human being here, I think, because there's less ability to edit, right? And it's really fascinating, I think.
I did want to convey, I mean, I want it to be, you know, I mean, it's still structurally a little bit different than the vacations plan, you know, it occurs to, things were condensed, but I wanted to have, I'm actually a really earnest person, and I wanted to try and do something that maybe reflected that. And
I think you got it.
I appreciate the comments. I like that you saw. I like that it came across, because it's a bit. I mean, I'm a bit sappy too, and it's like, but I was like, because that was the intention of the project, it was easy for me to do. It's very difficult for me to do that in general, or I'm very, you know, like you said, like very carefully constructed characters or caricatures. But in this case, it was like, and part of the time, like I told myself that, okay, I want to have this done so that's not the finished product, but I think it's an approximation of what it will be. And but yeah, the timeline does. I mean, if I had more time to edit, but again, I would hope that if I had more time to edit, it still wouldn't change the underlying ethos there, because that was my intention. So I'm really glad that it seemed to but I know that I like that it didn't bore anyone, because I know I go on these tangents, but I thought, well, Henry Miller does it about stuff that's less interesting to me, but I assure you the next chapters are the reading itself, which I think it's a work of fiction for anybody who, I mean, it's gonna, but it'll, I was worried that people were just waiting for that and be like, oh, where's that? But no, I'm glad.
You know what it is, Josh? You're really capturing like a mind in motion in these pieces, which is something that like a lot of the fiction that I really love does. Like Faulkner does this so well, and you know, and that kind of like that stream of consciousness, yours is more structured than that, but it's still very much, you get that sense of like, you can feel the gears grinding, and you can like get that sense of like thinking as it's happening, like occupying your mind as you're thinking this, as opposed to like someone telling you a story about what they thought, right? And it's as I said, it's superficially, it's very similar to some of your past work in that it's autofiction and all of that. But like on some fundamental level, this is really different and it's exciting.
Well, thanks a lot, and thanks for providing a venue for it. There'll be at least a couple more chapters, anyways. So yeah.
Awesome.
I like the criticism, maybe not total criticism, but the explanation of indie music that you use there, guitar music, as you characterize it as. I mean, that's great because the way you contrast it to the the house EDM with the but also like just that phrase is just a really good phrase. It's like, like Death Cab, they don't have the album called you can play these songs with chords or whatever. So I just thought that was really good. That made me laugh.
Thanks. Yeah, no, so some of this stuff is just stuff I've been thinking about for years and just have a place for it. I don't write think pieces and I'm not really interested in doing that kind of thing. And I also think other people can do it better. But it was like, yeah, I was thinking about all these things. It's funny because like this is becoming more about Toronto than it is about New York in a way. But anyways, yeah.
Oh, and the architecture thing, the broken telephone thing was really good too. I like that.
Elizabeth is great. Hopefully she can, she is a real person and her name is used. But yeah, it was a good insight.
Yeah. Like Rudy said, like you just said, I dig for really selfish reasons, I dig the like integration of like think piece and autofiction shit, like the intersection of like real life, like of like autofiction and of like criticism, because I've kind of fucked around with that a little bit on my Substack. And also I think your very best piece ever, the Hot Wheels collecting piece, also dabbles in that territory, and it's a really interesting creative space, I think. So yeah,
I want to do more with it, and I'll do it here.
it's cool stuff, Josh. So Gianluca's up next.
Thank you very
Now,
much.
Gianluca, I have to ask you, the
Yes?
last time you went before Josh, and and Josh was a real fucking bitch about it. Now Josh is going before you, so now's your chance to badmouth Josh.
No, I mean, it was really good, so I can't because it was really good, and it was not AI generated Family Guy for like 40 minutes, so I object.
Well, that's the thing. It was the time. It wasn't the content.
So.
Anyway, Gianluca, the floor is yours.
No, I completely agree. It did go on for too long. But anyway, yeah, this one's maybe going to be a nice shorter one. Who knows? All right, let's go. Okay, it's called The Saccharine and the Profane, and it's an essay. All right. It seems that in a lot of cases, people who are indeed correct and marginalized on an aesthetic level will, in their attempt to thumb their noses at the corrupt demos, artificially victimize themselves by presenting their enemies as being not only irrationally angry, but without motive. In a sense, it is their mere presence as an individual with such ideas that sets people off, and not so much a difference of values. We are all guilty of such a thing. Our enemies are hurting themselves, supposedly. We are acting on principle, and that sends them into impotent rage. The idea that those who hold ideas we correctly deem corrupt are having a grand old time, and their tirades are no more influenced by petty self-hatred than ours, or even that such people are motivated by outside forces unrelated to us, seems impossible. We insert ourselves into the mechanism of their supposed anguish so as to differentiate us from them. It is precisely our mingling with their emotional process that allows us to say that our enemy is entirely distinct from us. I am referring to the opposition between YA fiction and grimdark. It is indeed amusing that they have demonstrated the same apathy toward changing the system that they condemn in works deemed grimdark. However, the revelation of the moral bankruptcy underlying their position has given way to a kind of moralistic superiority. We pat ourselves on the back for being able to confront our demons through art and present a dichotomy where the dark artist is well-adjusted and the light-hearted artist is dour and unpleasant via memes. Is this not the very moralism we critique? The priority becomes the health of the individual rather than truth. The light-hearted art is presented as the unhealthy coping mechanism of the maladjusted individual, just as the dark art is presented as the excretions of a sick mind. This is an uncritical acceptance of art as a vector for truth. And while I largely agree with such a formulation, one must wonder whether art is always a necessary excretion. There are three main interpretations I have identified. One, the former as honest and the latter as dishonest. Two, the former artist excretes black fluid from the nose in order to sublimate what we consider excessive ugliness, and the latter presents an idealistic opposition to his suffering. Three, the art produced reflects what is missing from these artists' lives. The former has had a pleasant life and so is drawn to darkness, and vice versa. The third interpretation is demonstrably untrue, which leaves only 1 and 2. I'm engaging in interrogation of this narrative, as I have felt that those creating dark fiction have descended to the very self-indulgence we critique, and those who demand fiction have elements of moral instruction, just of a lesser degree. I'm necessarily more inclined toward the second interpretation, as it aligns more with my observations. People respond to pain in different manners, saying that an idealistic opposition to the plainly disgusting reality is denial of such a truth. Those who suffer are very much aware regarding the facticity of their wounds. Is just as inane as complaining the work offers no concrete solution, or even no solution at all. Does that mean that I personally am interested in such tendencies? No, because the harsh delineation between the two internet camps has warped our perception of the spectrum as it exists. It would be limiting to view art with the two categories of squeak horror and grimdark in mind. The saccharine and the profane are the two elements that can awaken a higher consciousness within the observer when applied correctly. The Book of Henry, for example, utilizes both the saccharine and the profane. The elements within the darker second half are foreshadowed within the intro, depicting pages from Henry Carpenter's notebook, and the simplistic yet understandable viewpoint of Henry exists as a motivating element for the plot even when he is dead. And so the film is not so much split into two halves embodying the two elements of extremity, the former being the saccharine and the latter profane, but instead there is a layering of the two elements with the prominence of certain components shifting across the runtime. This is why the film simultaneously shook so many people, and yet to the sensitive individual perfectly conveys the presence of the extremities within childhood. The extremities act as a shattering of mandated fiction reality that pervades all of the populist media of today, such as Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The fiction reality whispers to you, this is the extent of reality. The symbols do not exist. Our emotions are the realistic emotions. There's nothing so profane as to be crushing, or so saccharine as to be alien and thus discomforting. For as Christianity demonstrates, sometimes perfect good can be terrifying to a normal human. However, our sappiness is not tied to the saccharine. There are no cute kittens, only music stings, and depressed accountants with promises of resolution right around the corner. Am I suggesting a squee-grim alliance? Hardly. The two elements are so far apart that only an accident such as the Book of Henry can bring them together, and the world needs only so many of the Book of Henrys. Now, I do consider the vast majority of what is produced today saccharine. There is popular media occurring within fiction reality that is followed religiously, but the saccharine is the dominant element within society. When an element is dominant, it collapses into fiction reality, and it takes an exceptional work to realize its enlivening potential. As an example of a famous contemporary work with saccharine qualities is BoJack Horseman. While it does acknowledge certain harsh truths, i.e. complexities that were handled much better by other works that didn't have the benefit of hyping themselves up and, truth be told, are only truly sobering thoughts to an immature individual, it feels the need to cap off a lot of the misery with sentimentalism or self-conscious earnestness. It is politically didactic and believes so strongly in free will that it refuses to even engage the opposition. It rebukes the perspective of the penitent sinner and is inconsistent in its application of serious consequences. And so even as it dispenses so-called harsh truths, it is disconnected enough from the realities of being that it retains the saccharine element. Life being worth living emerges naturally from the primordial. The audience are not children that need the right way forward normalized. Indeed, the viewpoint of Dayan in regards to the effects of normalization on an audience is a precursor to many of the moralistic judgments perpetuated by modern critics. Thus, the saccharine overtakes the profane. Due to being a television show, it can never truly dip into depravity, and merges with fiction reality to create the instructional work. Mark Fisher critiqued noir fiction and gangster rap in capitalist realism as being reflective of a dog-eat-dog violence becoming part of an unassailable real. But even looking back from a hypothetical utopia, this would have indeed been an undeniable reality for many. Gray makes a mistake in Straw Dogs. Capitalism is a result of the rapacious predator that is humanity. He depoliticizes humanity's evil. He puts the events in the right order, but denies the evident causal link between the two elements, and so would make for correct historical fiction. The left is in a good state regarding reforms with the recent US student loan forgiveness and the historic establishment of workers' unions across many businesses, which previously held uncontested power over their laborers. However, it is entirely different when it comes to the popular cultural element. The left is consumed by media that functions as spectacle, be it debate streamers that reduce discussions to the level of professional wrestling, video essayists with fundamentally derivative and mediocre aesthetics that state the obvious, or discussions over hypothetical utopias on Twitter. Worse still is our tendency to play aesthetic catch-up to the right. Antifa Stone Toss convinced nobody, as it simply inverted the politics of a hateful alt-right cartoonist. And the Gravel Institute posits itself as a leftist PragerU. Ideas are being plugged into forms that don't suit them. We'll never get anywhere if we simply rebrand right-wing media projects. Appropriation doesn't sting as much when it has become an everyday practice on the internet. It becomes the artistic equivalent of saying someone else's words in a funny voice. The moment remixing becomes instantaneous and effortless, doing so on its own will never be an effective counterattack. The revolution isn't coming soon, and it isn't guaranteed that it will be handled well. Until the day that life changes through either sufficient reform or violent action, perversity and blandness will be an inherent element of life itself. Perversity, and by extension the profane, as an element of extremity, often after overlaps with the motivating structures considered good and healthy by society. Man is neither good nor bad, because paranoia can become perceptiveness, resentment can become drive, and desperation can be warranted. And so perversity can simply remind people that diamonds are worthless. The simple awakening can allow people to walk away from certain demands of the world. To be a contrarian is to embody a useful vector for a worthwhile artistic scene. Hopefully we can access a contrarian tendency in the left that doesn't commercialize itself with merchandise tie-in books for podcasts, but instead expresses itself through poetry chapbooks and movies only shown once or twice at a film festival without disappearing into obscurity. We tried commercialism. We tried appealing to the demos. It didn't work. Culturally, we made fools of ourselves. While elitism may be the key, the place within the hierarchy should not be determined by consensus, but by the clarity, precision, originality, and insight of the individual critic. If a critic can mine beauty out of a mockbuster or a terrible 2000s CGI direct-to-DVD movie, then that speaks to the quality of their spirit rather than an infantile personality. People should try to engage more with the beauty that exists in every work. Mystery builds intrigue. If we aesthetically reveal our hand, culture becomes just another product. But when mystery and legend is introduced, people are awoken and begin to see the work outside of spectacle-fueled discourse. You may say that that's unconvincing and that elitism is a generator of spectacle. But when the work doesn't have to obey the rules of the market and the spectacle revolves around an absence, the work floats free and exists in a space where it can be interrogated with rigor. Just be sure to upload a couple pirate copies for the fans. Just as capitalist realism promotes certain assumptions as unassailable, so too does fiction reality promote a narrow range of imagination suitable for the desires of society. Easy to understand metaphors, clear morality, and plotting that can only accelerate all coalesce into an atmosphere devoid of the higher element, spirituality, morality, etc. Clear morality, when taken to an extreme, posits good and evil as facts of life, and so morality becomes externalized and not an aspect of the person. Fiction reality can also exist on a political level. For example, the myth of the royal family's usefulness. It is precisely their apolitical nature, and thus lack of emotional provocation, that allows them to uphold the status quo. Their apoliticism is tied to tradition. Tradition is held as an inherent aspect of the country's structural and moral fabric, despite all evidence to the contrary. Tradition is plainly revealed to be the impotent thing it is via its juxtaposition against regular political machinations, in contrast to the powerful and transcendent pagan rituals. However, apoliticism allows the tradition to persist despite this contradiction and be accepted as a part of reality. People assume that tourists would suddenly drop in number if it weren't for overpaid aristocrats, and that people who come for the sake of privileged spongers are even desirable. If the saccharine or the profane were to be introduced into the rituals, people could awaken to true reality. Nihilism is a drive that destroys markets through appeal to the profane, and so the nihilistic element is useful as part of the two-pronged attack on fiction reality. The entire dichotomy of optimism and cynicism is false, and only makes sense when viewed from the perspective of fiction reality. Optimistic works can be amoral in what they advocate, and cynical works, Gantz and the novels of Bret Easton Ellis, use their cynicism to heighten their social critique. It would indeed be difficult to classify Freddy Got Fingered as either an optimistic or cynical work. On one hand, it has an expression of the pure artistic id when out against a restrictive father figure, despite the odds being against him, and on the other, this expression of the id commits several morally dubious actions. Ooh, can we move entirely past this dichotomy? No. The increasing rigidity regarding the categorization of works into these camps is telling of a certain rejection of ambiguity and the fact that optimism and cynicism both contain aspects of one another. To condense, populism, when applied to culture, is a weapon of the platform. The woman who asks to be left alone to read her billionaire breeding king novels raises a good point, as long as she can summon a spirited defense against the user. And the two elements that exist outside of fiction, reality, the saccharine and the profane, must be fed and accelerated to break the very foundation and symbology of the apolitical fiction reality. When fiction reality is gone, realities will bloom. Anyway, yeah.
Gianluca, this is fucking brilliant. This is really, and it touches on something I've been thinking about lately, which, and I think I tweeted something a little bit about this earlier today, which is that, like, fuck you, man, you said this shit better than I could, but like the false tension between the like uplifting and the tragic, right? That or like, as you put it, the saccharine and the profane, like that, like, and you see this work its way out constantly in the discourse, where there's just, on the one hand, like you said, like this defense of like purely morally uplifting fiction for its own sake, the saccharine fiction for its own sake, but also where there's this counter tendency that I think a lot of us are guilty of like denouncing all of that universally, right? And advocating strictly for the tragic or the edgy or the ugly as being, like you say, like somehow closer to reality, which I think, as you say again, is also kind of false. It's really interesting, actually, that there are two pieces tonight that are kind of almost critiques of the, like, the tendency to to create transgressive art, or like that are critiques of our like knee-jerk defenses of transgressive art. The other one I'm talking about is Rudy's poem, and it's really interesting the time you get these moments of synchronicity, right, where like on Misery Loves Company all the time, where you have a few writers who are working on the same wavelength at the same time in different ways. The other thing I want to talk about, though, the thing that really fucking got me, your critique of BoJack Horseman is fucking perfect. Like, I watched that show from beginning to end. I liked moments of it. I liked parts of it, but I think it's a tremendous creative failure. And I think it's a tremendous creative failure for exactly the reason you said, which is that, like, ultimately uses its moments of cynicism towards a completely morally didactic end. At the end of the day, this is a fucking show that wants to instruct and wants to teach, and that like wants to hammer you with what it perceives to be like its truths, right? And that as a result is like the exact fucking opposite of like what you want from a piece of fiction about like this kind of anti-heroic character, right? Like, and I know it's trying to be a critique of that, but most like and I know it's trying on some level to be like an anti-Breaking Bad or an anti-Sopranos or something, but the problem is that like its artistic impulse is rotten to the core and just completely vacant and completely heavy-handed, whereas like those works are actually fucking brilliant. Anyway, you said a lot of this shit better than I can, but like your critique of BoJack Horseman is like so perfectly in line with what I experienced, the frustrations I experienced while watching it. Anyway, this is really good fucking shit, man. And as usual, I love the way that you go in so many different directions seemingly at once, and yet manage to pull the whole thing together into a cohesive, like intellectual whole. It's like a talent that only you have, man. It's really good.
Jean-Luc, I just wanted to say, I love that you mentioned Straw Dogs. Did you, yeah, it's definitely not a perfect book. It's so like it runs on so much like negative energy, but yeah, it gave me the, I guess, the armor I needed for like the chaos of 2020. It's like, yeah, if anyone, yeah, I strongly recommend it to anyone. Did you like the book personally?
Honestly, and I'm gonna be 100 here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna apologize here. I was reading it and am currently reading it as I was writing this. So I was referring to a specific part in the beginning, but necessarily, yeah. And that was a bit goofy of me. I apologize.
Oh,
but
no, I
nonetheless,
was just excited that someone else knew
Yeah.
about the book. That's all. I was just,
yeah, it's from what I've read is really good. So
yeah,
and
no,
I'm
I
glad
think
hey,
you'll love it.
that's
It
as good
questions,
a
like,
recommendation as any.
yeah, it questions everything. Like it's so good.
Yeah,
Thank you, Luca. Oh, sorry, Rudy.
one thing I like here is the line, the woman who asks to be left alone to read her billionaire breeding kink novels raises a good point, as long as she can summon a spirited defense. And that last part, like the spirited defense, like that's what's absent from most modern, like, quote unquote critique, I guess. Even like real critique, that's not, basically everything on Twitter and on social media and in the spaces where people are discussing things they like, just their hobbies or whatever. Like nothing, everything is just absent of energy. It's just a sinkhole of energy. And like you get like they hear somebody talk about something they're interested in, like, or it's something they want to defend, like the idea of defending something, the idea that you have to defend something, like that's missing from most of these debates, is everything is for like clout or for whatever, for status. Or I think that was a really good point to point out.
Yeah, man, I agree with you. I mean, the passion is like so completely lacking. Like I will listen to someone give a passionate defense of something I find absolutely reprehensible before I want to listen to someone like kind of like rotely like say something I like is good, right? When you can feel like the deadness in their voice,
Yeah, I mean, it's like Twitter thread culture. It's like, well, this is 10 reasons why this is whatever.
Yeah,
It's
and
like a dissection, but without the gag reflex, basically, like dissecting an
right.
animal without, I don't know, but that's a really,
No, I agree with you, man. And maybe that's why no one has ever convinced me to come around to like the MCU or anything, because I've never really like the defenses you hear of like fucking Black Panther or whatever always seem like these kind of pre-canned, pre-scripted, kind of weird, like sideways justifications. I've never heard someone like really like passionately talk about like why they love these fucking like cookie cutter like movies by template and stuff, because I don't know that you can love something created by template.
They sort of feel like political talking points, like just to kind of
Yeah.
piggyback on what you're saying. It feels like
Yeah.
this is important, so therefore it matters, but it's never really discussed why it's important or why like it hits you so
Right.
hard. So yeah, it just goes, okay, I don't give a shit then is kind of the response.
Yeah, no, I fucking
Yeah.
that's it, right? This
That's
is
it,
important,
yeah.
therefore it matters. That formulation of argument, my eyes are immediately I glaze over when somebody tries to approach it that way, because it can't possibly be if that's your defense, right? Like if you have to default to this is important, then in some weird, perverse, ironic way, you are acknowledging that it's trivial, right?
Yeah, it's like a teacher saying like, let's read this
Yeah.
book, and all the students are like, I fuck, this sucks, I don't care about it. He says, but you need to care, but never properly kind of elucidates why. So then yeah, like you said, you roll your eyes at it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
fucking exactly it. Anyway, thank you, Gianluca, as usual. And you can see like how fucking brilliant your shit is, because we just spent another 5-10 minutes to like debating what you just wrote about. Anyway, thank you, man. Fucking rocks as usual. Now, Adam would be next, but I think Adam has not found his way back in after I think I accidentally booted him somehow early on, and I've apologized in DM and tried to get him back in here, but he's not having any luck. But are you here, Adam, by any chance? No. In which case,
No, William, because
yeah?
based on the country that you're in, he's now working on his lawsuit, his emotional damages lawsuit about how
Yeah,
the
yeah.
duress he experienced by being removed from misery tourism in the
Well-
States for entertainment.
It would be an honor to be sued by Adam.
Even in Williamsburg, my favorite place on earth. Anyway,
Restaurant owners thought it got me.
Thank you, Josh. So that's so then Gabe is last up tonight.
Did you get my link? Yeah. there we go.
I did, and I just put it in the chat.
Cool. So yeah, this is gonna be in Lit Reactor, like next week or the week after. I saw that there was like a trend of like eating this, that Chandler Morrison and Al Nash both wrote books, fiction about eating disorder, and then I was writing this sort of essay on them, and then a book got actually assigned to me out of the blue called The Appetite Factory that ended up being yet another one, but taking, I guess, the eating disorder concept to an absurd level. So I added that in. So it's a nice pitchfork of eating disorder reflection. Let me turn my... I'm not sure if I was ever actually anorexic. Luckily, I snapped out of it before a diagnosis. But there was that one summer of 1990 where I was trying to make my body disappear, parallel to the way other kids might run away from home. However, those kids would eventually get hungry and return to their family's regimented dining room table, and I wasn't satisfied until my bones began to protrude from my skin. It was middle school, where I often fought physically for my life against a whirlwind of fists attached to skinny wrists. I had developed and perhaps stalled into a body weight not acceptable to Southern California yearbooks. I stopped being afraid of fighting, which was good. The bad news was that I'd fixate on the gangly arms I was being pummeled by. So thin, I swore I could break them, but there was a fierce confidence inherent in their sleek bodies, and I knew I needed that morale even if it killed me. Undistracted by ambush once summer hit, I would starve myself for days, chewing on ice for snack, bolstered by a righteous sense of protest like the Tibetan monks engulfed in flames I saw on t-shirts. My cheekbones, my rib cage, my wrists and fingers and legs became so skeletal, it's like my flesh just burned away. It was 8th grade when I returned to school that fall, and I was suddenly popular, a celebrated oddity with my new malnourished makeover I achieved by any means necessary. I was an overnight magnetic, though some were intimidated by me, a pale, freakish stickman presence beneath a nest of wild dyed blue-black hair. Now the cruel eyes were all mine, acquiring the priceless wisdom of just look like you're fucking crazy, act like you're insane, but my mystique would take no efforts. When you've given in to an eating disorder, your reflection off the world is warped as a funhouse mirror and you react as such. If I hadn't eventually discovered marijuana, I wonder how long I would have taken it, how far I would have taken it. A decade later, in the early days of the internet, I could have been commiserating in online chat rooms with the contrarian support of pro-Ana culture. This is the blueprint played true to faith in L. Nash's Gag Reflex. Not a novel, but a live journal, as Nash refers to it. We assume we know this kind of work considering Dennis Cooper's The Sluts or Amygdalatropolis by B.R. Yeager. But Gag Reflex is perhaps even more daring by its literal recreation of the online messaging schematic, offering a deeper immersion that tempts you to forget you're even reading a book. Nash's third book is perhaps her most alienating, yet she makes it clear right from the dedication who she had to write it for first. This is for me, my younger self, and for my pain. And when one writes about alienation, inclusivity is often the last thing on our minds. Conversely, nothing is held back here. Reading Gag Reflex is impulsive as finding someone's diary. Nothing in these entries is left to the imagination. And if you have a conscience, you might even feel bad for reading it. But guilt is the active ingredient here when following Lucy. Really, we become Lucy. Through every step forward, 2 steps back of binging, purging alongside private hunger strikes. Lucy insists on blaming herself for every inch gained. Quotes, eating disorders are very specifically difficult because you need to interact with one of the main triggers of your addiction every single day in order to survive, Nash recently told The Observer. It's insight like this that suggests Gag Reflex is a braver, more vulnerable read than whatever drug novels you've indulged in, where the addict, at least, is rewarded with the euphoria from their vice. Nash reminds us that corners like Lucy's are far more suffocating, where the only prize is abnegation, self-subtraction, a living nightmare of reduction every time you glance into the mirror. And mirrors may lie, but not before they can become temporary portals into alternate cautionary death trajectories, as explored by Chandler Morrison in his new novella, Thigh Gap, from My Dark Library. Since nobody writes uncompromising as Morrison, it's no wonder he chose the coldest paths of the vapid and grotesque to tackle the brittle delusion of anorexia nervosa. Yet with his portrayal of unlikable people and the eerily familiar metro dystopias that spawned them, a character like Helen Troy is an astonishing trouble doll we find ourselves clinging to, like a death grip on your last matchstick. A fashion model in rigor mortis Los Angeles, Helen has a secret she wears like a billboard, visibly surrendering to weight loss chaos and opioid benzo addiction. Her dysmorphia takes the form of a hallucinated slug, her past, and a corpse girl, her future. They warn her, yet distract her from her present decomposition, while industry denizens and bon vivants of Helen's Babylon not only enable her decay, but nearly cheer it on in clipped, detached, cynical dialogue of which Morrison is a master from the very first line of the book. God, you're so thin, it's perfect. You don't even look like a woman. You look like a little girl. The movie director says this from the bed, his eyes watching me from the Varney sunglasses he's yet to remove, unquote. Hashtag Thigh Gap is somehow deliciously cool and breathtakingly empathetic, the latter of which Morrison isn't exactly a poster boy for. Yet it works here seamlessly in the drastic contrast of high stakes. With every malevolent turn, we fall that much more in love with Helen. However, it is Hal, her lecherous, narcissistic shrink, who is also a stand-up comedian, who nearly steals the whole show. Quotes, I mean, you threw it all up though, right? Hal says. So like, what's the big deal? Crisis averted. You look great. You look slamming. You're a smoke show, babe. Oh Christ, don't tell me you're gonna cry again. That's 2 sessions in a row. Intertwined throughout her decline is the painful reoccurrence of 90s dance pump The Look by Roxette, a campy yet strategic touch that makes Helen's world pop as her stumbling runway. As uncomfortable as subjects Morrison tackles, it's his wielding of satire that burns it deeper into our conscience, a psychic transfusion of trauma reverberated by canned laughter to assure we are paying attention. In the end, Helen's gains are her losses and vice versa tenfold, rendering management, therapy, partners, and the industry itself obsolete. Fading away, our angel loses so much control that she actually achieves it, whispering the last laugh, reserving the right to close her own curtain. Previously, we've seen one of Chandler Morrison's characters bring further disorder to eating, a mode of cruelty to inflict upon others in his 2020 neon noir novel, Along the Path of Torment. The novel's damaged protagonist, Ty Seward, forces a succession of women to eat the inedible, Q-tips, used toilet paper and tissues, and tinfoil. In no relation other than its odd precedence, this concept has appeared to sort of ricochet off the cosmos 2 years later, to land in Leonard Lundell, or focused in John Gingrich's debut novel, The Appetite Factory, released this last August from Keylight Books. An embattled public relations agent in Manhattan during the 2008 financial crisis, Lundell has a strange addiction to eating objects and substances with no nutritional value: detergent, pencils, hand soap, antifreeze, upholstery, and yes, toilet paper. Lundell can afford to eat at some of NYC's finest restaurants, yet only picks at the expensive meals his obese stalker Patty would die for. He doesn't truly dine until he's home, when he sprinkles laundry detergent on whatever canned vegetables he deems a suitable vessel for his advanced tastes. In these private moments of reprieve and catharsis, Lundell slips into swirling introspective exaltation, dissecting the assertive notes and daring flavors to the reader the way a sommelier loves a fine wine. He scooped the turquoise grounds into the can, gave it a stir, and watched the slurry thicken into an iridescent gravy. The corn was studded with life now, sang with anise and dill, tones so dizzyingly complex he imagined them lying dormant for a millennium, waiting to be uncovered. He went straight for the box. Alone, the detergent harbored a simpler composition, an effervescence of cilantro and lime that teased his tongue with earthly chars, unquote. Lundell's dietary compulsions are so unhinged that he often can't wait. He'll sneak into the bathroom to sample its antiseptics or steal cleaning products off the janitor cart. A quick pump here, a quick spray there when no one is looking. Of course, his obstructionist habits wreak havoc on his anatomy. So between bites, he's popping antacids, in it for the long haul, hooked on these floral flavors and challenging textures like he's addicted to money, earned from his PR crisis/strategy long con. Unlike gag reflex and thigh gap, who tackle eating disorders more matter of fact, The Appetite Factory uses Lundell's secret as a broader commentary on our culture's gradual collapse. We feel more sympathy/empathy with Nash's Lucy and Morrison's Helen, whereas with Lundell, we are simply repulsed and repelled to desperately scan for a grand analogy to make sense of his more absurd cravings for self-destruction. Yet by the end of Gingrich's novel, there's no big reveal other than simple contexts. The way his mother has become a hoarder to express her depression. The way US banks are strategically fucking over US citizens to cause the 2008 crash. The way Lundell's own company ends up orchestrating crisis to raise the visibility of clients as he extracts the contents of their wallets. When these American late-stage capitalist habits play out so unsustainably, suddenly Lundell's suppressed lust for poison makes perfect sense as a glitched byproduct thereof, notwithstanding the expiration of inevitable reflux.
Gabe, this is an awesome review. And I like the way you tease out these books, right? Because you have 3 very different books on the same subject. And I like the way you take each one of them kind of meticulously apart and like really and this has been true of reviews and stuff that you've written in the past, you have a real knack for making the reader want to read the book, right? Tantalizing them just enough. Like you've done a kind of clever thing here where you're introducing details about the book that like don't serve as a like a lot of reviews, a lot of like promo pieces for books are basically plot synopsis, right? It's like, well, here's
Right.
the hook. Here's the hook. This is why you should read this. This is a serial killer novel about, you know, a flying cat or whatever. You know, it's
No,
like,
yeah,
oh, okay,
reviews should be about where they fit in culture, you know. That's
yes,
like, yeah,
yeah.
that's what I want to read, you know.
And that's what you've done here is you've like carefully situated each of these books. Instead of giving us an elevator pitch, you've carefully situated them, as you said, like in the culture. And you're doing a kind of subtle comparing and contrasting of them that doesn't feel like a book report, right? Like you're fleshing them out in a way that shows like just how nuanced this underlying issue is, right? Just how like deeply personal it can be in like your own really like stunningly well written personal anecdote at the beginning and in Elle's book, but also like how coldly it can be perceived too, right? In
Right,
Chandler's
right.
piece, and how like with the final piece, it becomes like this way of viewing the larger society and the larger culture and the larger politics. And you take us through that in a way that's brief, and that doesn't feel at any point like it becomes homework. It's propulsive, right? It's good, Gabe. It's good. That's
Oh,
what I'm trying
thank
to
you.
say.
Yeah, you guys have to read Appetite Factory. It's one of the funniest books I've ever read in my life. It's definitely like my favorite book of the year so far.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I'll have to check it out. What was the press there for that one?
For King or Keylight Books, it's like I think it's a subsidiary. I don't have the book in front of me. I think it's a subsidiary of something larger.
Gotcha. I'll have
Yeah.
to try to track it down. Good. Thank you, Gabe.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I think Rudy has something.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, I like your synopsis. Well, not synopsis, but what you do with, as William said, kind of dancing around the things in the premise. They're interesting, like just enough to get people kind of hooked in and like, yeah. But yeah, that the Appetite Factory sounds amazing. Like
It's
the
so
eating
good. It's so
now,
good. It's this guy's debut novel, and yeah, it's like just fucking incredible.
yeah, I'll have to check it out.
Well, Pika is kind of one of your personal little pet fascinations, isn't it, Rudy?
Yeah, yep,
What
Pika. Yeah.
what is?
Like the
Pika
eating
is
of
the like medical term for the like condition where you eat inedible things, you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
what is the term called?
Pika, I think it's Pica. Is that right, Rudy?
yeah,
Pika. Oh, crazy.
Pika. Yeah, but yeah, no, that sounds like a fucking awesome book.
Yeah, the scenes where he's describing like the flavors, like it's the funny things like these flavors, like that he's like uncovered and that the secret's all his, and then he throws it all up, but it's like worth every bite.
Oh man, that's great.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Gabe. Now, I did say Gabe was last, but Adam came in here just in time. Got back in here just in time. Are you with us, Adam? Maybe it's not even the same Adam. Who could say? Night, Gianluca. Are you with us, Adam? Oh, wait, nope. Maybe he's like reading to the kids or something, and he's got this on in secret or something. So I don't want to put him in a bad position, or maybe it's not even or Adam. We'll see.
Looks like he's saying can't get it to work on phone.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Well, in that case, unless someone has a piece they really want to read, I guess we'll call it for tonight.
I have a funny piece.
Oh, there we go. Hey, okay, Sam, it's all yours.
All right, hang on. It's mildly racist, but not it's anti-trad, but it's a speech given by Marcus Aurelius, Platonius, Thomas Aquinas, Tyrannus, Sorius Rex, King Darius, Socrates, Plato the Fourth, to the first meeting of the white Israelites. Good evening to all my beautiful white Anglo-Aryan, Teuton, Celtian, librarian brothers and sisters. Before we shall begin ceremoniously, I must ask that you cease all referentialism as regards to myself and I as Derek, for that is my white slave name. As from here on henceforth, I shall only be responding to all correspondences that address myself's personages as Marcus Aurelius, Platonius, Thomas Aquinas, Tyrannosaurus, Rex, King Darius, Socrates, Plato the Fourth. It has been a long journey for our Anglo-Aryan, Teuton, Celtian, Librarian, Aquarian sons and daughters of Marian peoples after our expulsion from the land of our teleological destiny. The true Israel told us in biblical times in the books of Genesarian and Exaquarian, that is, my brothers and sisters, Rome. Our land most ancient and old, and antiquarian, full of many good things and beautiful women, that is currently under occupation of that miscegenated Mediterranean, whose name we must not utter unless absolutely necessitarian. I'm of course speaking of the Italiano. It is in fact we who, genetically speaking, though I know we find all biologisms and empiricarianisms to be a manifestation of that Christ annihilarian world Jewry. But regardless, my brothers and sisters, it is we that are the perfect manifestations of the Aryan, Anglo, Teuton, Celtian, Librarian, Caesarians that are superior to all other form of inbred Caucasarian, born in the home of this most United States of America. Now, my brothers and sisters, recent events as regarding our beloved president would have our child Arians fighting a war of occupation with that one virile and pure strain left of the Aryan, the Iranian, and a Iranian war of occupation with a race of agrarians that, speaking historically, our peoples have never made war with, that in fact, part of a line descends from speaking patriarchally. That's all I've got so far, but that's the
Sam, holy shit. I think you've made Dr. Seuss proud here, man. First of all, you need to fucking finish this piece because you're killing us. Like, the entire like quasi musical way this is written, the absurd musicality of this speech does so much to like bring out like the underlying just hilarious absurdity of this ideology, right? Like, I like the way that you like this like white supremacist meets basically like a white version of like Hotep shit, like ideology that you've created here. It's intrinsically hilarious, right? Man, and the detour about Italians, oh my god, like you've done something that's I think kind of hard to do, which is you've created a satirical work about racism, right? And a lot of satirical works about racism, like, because we like really like to laugh at racist shit, because I think it's in our genes to like laugh at racist shit. Often like satirical works about racism, you're in it, and I don't want to get into like the woke, like, are you punching up, punching down thing, but like often like it's just such a deep desire within us to like laugh at the racist shit on its level, right? That like to have pieces where you're always like laughing at the absurdity of the racist, I think is hard. And I think this piece nails that. Like at throughout, like I was entirely like sure that I was laughing at this dude and at his worldview, as opposed to like laughing at Italians or whatever. Not that I'm opposed to someone reading a piece that's making fun of Italians, right? But I just
I think it's still okay to laugh at Italians. I think we're still cool with it. I think everyone's cool with that.
But no, Sam, this is really funny and it's great. Thank you.
I was trying to make trad hotep, basically. What it was what I pictured.
Well, that came across. It's exactly
Yeah.
like the guy with the fucking like the fucking Greek statue as his avatar, and like he didn't crop
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
and it's like it's basically just the crotch or whatever in the shot.
I think Dawson was bitching about trad accounts, like the Greek statue accounts with Latin names that they don't understand in the group chat. And I was just like, brothers and sisters.
Oh my God. Yeah,
Fucking good shit, Sam. It's very funny.
that was awesome.
Now I see Adam has joined with a different account. Are you with us, Adam? Are you functional?
Yeah, I'm functional. I'm here, but I don't need to read tonight. I can just read some other time.
Do you want to read tonight?
No, I'm
No.
okay with reading.
Okay. I know you're feeling kind of under the weather. Well, just let me know if you want to read from the novel next week then.
Okay,
Okay. Yeah. Feel better, man.
thanks.
Okay, so I think we're gonna wrap up there then. As usual, I'm gonna leave the Zoom meeting up for a little bit so people can hang out, but I'm gonna end the recording. So if you're watching this on YouTube, this has been Misery Loves Company. We do this every fucking Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Anyone is welcome to come and share their work. Anyone is welcome to come and just lurk. Anyone is welcome, is the point. We tweet out the link from our Twitter account at Misery Tourism right before we begin. Just click the link and join. And fuck it, man. That's it. Guys, thank you. Thank you so much to everyone who read. This was a really fun one tonight, I think. Lots of really great pieces. Nothing but the fucking hits, right? All right. Thanks, guys. That's it. No, it's not it because they changed the recording thing back. Okay, I got it.